Hello, everyone. I'm Damien Johnson, Chief Architect of the Global RISE program here at SAP. Today, I'll be your host for a thought leadership session with perspectives from some of our colleagues on the topic of cloudification of the digital core, a glimpse into tomorrow's intelligent enterprise. During this visionaries discussion, we'll be exploring the topic of how enterprises can effectively future-proof their business with a cloud-based ERP digital core. But before we begin, let's take a quick look at this virtual event platform. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a row of widget icons. These icons control the various windows, which are resizable and movable by clicking on the arrows on the top right corner. Feel free to move them around to get the most of your desktop for better experience during this panel discussion. You may want to maximize the video media window to full screen. We'll be answering your questions as part of the Q&A session after the panel discussion. You can use the Q&A box below this to submit your queries. Remember, you do not have to wait until the end of the panel discussion to submit them. We have an event survey that you can fill out at any time during the event. Your responses will help us better plan the virtual experience. Finally, in today's world, it's not uncommon to experience an internet glitch. If your screen buffers and freezes, just refresh your browser page. In most cases, that resolves the common issues. You can also use the chat box to post any logging of tech-related issues with our On24 platform, and our team will try to best resolve any issues. Without further ado, let's meet our panelists for today. Our first panelist is Ramesh. Ramesh is a seasoned IT professional with over 15 years of experience in digital next-generation technologies. He has collaborated with some of the world's leading companies to help them drive maximum value from their SAP investments by capitalizing on the power of Google Cloud. Ramesh has incubated HANA, BI, S4HANA practices globally for TCS and ran several consulting-driven SAP strategy and roadmap initiatives, which has helped our customers reduce total cost of ownership, enhance uptime, boost innovation, and extend their core capabilities. Ramesh, an experienced speaker, has presented at a number of conferences, including Sapphire, TechEd, and other market-leading events. He has been featured in leading publications, including CIO.com. Welcome, Ramesh. Did we lose Ramesh? Well, let me just keep going.
Thank you,
on
Damien.
then.
Thank you, Damien, for this introduction. I was on mute, sorry. So looking forward to an interesting conversation with yourself, Snehanshu and Yugal.
All right, great. Thanks for joining us, Ramesh. Next, I want to introduce Snehanshu Shah. He's the Managing Director of the SAP Partnership at Google. He's responsible for ensuring the success of SAP customers on Google and managing the partnership with SAP. Snehanshu has spent 12 years at SAP leading go-to-market initiatives at the global and regional level for SAP HANA. In his last role at SAP, he was part of the SAP database and data management leadership team and also led the data science team here at SAP. Prior to SAP, Shah held product management, pre-sales, and engineering leadership positions at Oracle, KLA, Tencor, Motorola, and MCC. Snehanshu has a BS in electrical engineering from the Illinois Institute of Technology and an MS in electrical engineering from the University of Texas in Austin. Welcome, Snehanshu.
Damien, hey, thank you. It's a pleasure being here and looking forward to this conversation with Ramesh and yourself. Thank you.
Great to have you here, Snehanshu. And last but not least, I'm going to introduce Yugal Joshi. Unfortunately, he's caught in flight, so he's on the phone. We won't be unfortunately able to see his face on this event. But Yugal is Everest Group's business leader for technology services, research and advisory memberships, which include multiple programs such as applications, cloud services, digital, and platforms. In this role, he's responsible for shaping and growing these programs by leading a team of analysts serving the client engagements and published research. Yugal's articles and commentary are regularly included in leading business news and technology media, and he regularly contributes to the Everest Group's blog. Before joining Everest Group, he's worked in many research-driven enterprises, including a 12-member cross-country analyst team. He's responsible for creating and managing and delivering the research agenda, selling research to institutional investors, clients, and guiding corporate strategy and sales teams. So Yugal, in his earlier career, was leading software companies such as Adobe Systems, Tata Consulting Services. He holds an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management and an engineering degree from the Delhi College of Engineering, New Delhi, India. Yugal, welcome on the phone.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope I am loud and clear. I can see my picture on the slide, but not my face. I'm sorry.
Not a problem, Yugal. This is what happens in the digital world that we live in. So welcome and thanks for taking part. So without any further ado, let's have a look at, let's move on into the, begin the panel discussion. So, and I know, Yugal, we can't see your face on this one, but I wanted to actually, as we talk about this, the cloudification and what it means for the digital core and ultimately what our customers really want. I was just wondering if you can just share with us your kind of like a perspective on what the enterprises are realizing the need for ERP modernization and what an investing in a cloud ERP initiative should be like.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting and pertinent question. In one of our research around this topic, we found that, which wasn't surprising to me, that more than 80% of enterprises believe that their digital core, where of course ERP plays a very important part, directly impacts their top line, their performance, and their growth. Having said that, what was very surprising to the extent of being shocking to me was that out of these, less than 15% actually said that they believe that they have a future-proof platform. And the reason I say I was shocked because, digital transformation has been going on for quite some time. Cloud-led technology transformation has been going for quite some time. And despite that, very few enterprises actually believe that they have a future-proof platform. But enterprises realize that they have to do something about it. They are not just sitting idle and then, but just saying it is what it is. Everybody is trying to future-proof their digital core, which means they are realizing that whatever ERP landscape they have as of today, and all of the organizations have a very different footprint of ERP, very complex, customized, different modules, many times from different vendors, sometimes from same such as SAP. But they realize that they have to modernize their ERP. And as modernization of ERP comes into picture, so does cloud-based ERP initiatives, because in today's world, no modernization initiative, including ERP, can go without leveraging cloud services. In addition, unlike earlier time where ERP modernization or SAP modernization ended up being more of a technology standardization, technology upgrade type of initiative, now, in addition to the usual expectation of cost efficiencies, operational efficiencies, what we are seeing is enterprises now pushing for customer experience and productivity as two core themes while they modernize their ERP systems. And the good thing is, the cloud vendors are also seeing this. So, of course, cloud vendors keep interacting with these enterprises, and they realize where these enterprises have historically struggled. So now what these cloud vendors are doing is, in addition to their core cloud platform, which is, the platform and the infrastructure, they are adding a lot of extended capabilities on their cloud platform. And these extended capabilities are actually changing the game for ERP transformation. And that's the reason in our research, we realized that almost 1 in 3 SAP ECC customers has either begun or plans to start their S/4HANA migration. And 1 in 2 are looking to do this in the next 2 to 3 years. So in summary, I think cloud-based ERP has been a big driver of modernization of digital, modernization core for enterprises, and to make a digital core which is not only ready for today, but also for the future. Back to you.
Great. Thanks, Yugal, for that insight. I actually just listening for that, like I say, for myself, having been in this world for too long period to think about, it's interesting to see how actually each generation we have this new aspect, and the whole cloud aspect really comes to the forefront. So with that, I thought I would introduce Snehanshu here, because working within the Google Cloud operations, I think you get a good insight into how cloud actually helps our organizations, our customers. So I was just going to say, could you share your perspectives on the continuous modernization, the repeated innovation and credibility of the intelligent world that cloud platforms in general brings, and perhaps you can actually touch upon specifically into obviously how Google Cloud helps out with that. Snehanshu?
Yeah, Damien, I'm happy to. And it's interesting. I think fully agree with you, Gal. One of the things we're seeing is a rapid adoption of cloud as companies are modernizing their ERPs, switching over to S/4HANA. And I think that, one of the things we're seeing is this move is actually accelerating, especially with SAP Rise right now. Now, the question, to answer your question, where does cloud, what are the benefits that cloud provides? If I look at a lot of our customers, customers today, as you all pointed out, are looking at a couple of different things. One is, how do I provide my users with a better experience? How do I simplify my landscape, right? So one of the things we're seeing is consolidation. This is where cloud helps. A lot of times customers ended up with many instances of SAP just because of they're having distributed operations. Now, if you think about the cloud and you think about the networking and the speed that cloud providers provide, you can actually consolidate your instances. So one of the interesting things we're seeing is, at a landscape level, a consolidation taking place. There are customers that are moving to single instances, or customers are basically looking at and saying, can I reduce the number of instances we have? The second thing that cloud provides, I think this is a huge promise of the cloud, is the ability to handle large volumes of data. Now, that's been going on for the last 5 to 10 years. Now, imagine if you could take SAP and you can take the planning abilities that SAP provides and start introducing new data sets. This can make your planning process much more intelligent. Think about it from the analytics perspective and bringing the ability that clouds provide in terms of AI and ML. So I'll give you a very simple example. Alphabet implemented S4 around 3 years ago, started that journey. Alphabet is right now fully in production. And one of the interesting things that Alphabet has done is extended S4 with AI ML. So simple things like, can I actually, based on looking at past accounts receivables, can I predict my cash position? Can I do interesting? We have a customer right now that's using the same idea, but they're looking at how do I prioritize deliveries, right? And how do I help their, what they're looking at is how do they help their end customers, and how do they provide better insight for their end customers on when they can ship goods. So that's what the analytics and the IML is a huge piece. And then last but not least, the other thing that, when I look at clouds, it's resiliency. So think about it, essentially cloud is a utility. You and I today, we don't worry about generating electricity, right? We just get it. So this is the other area that I see. I'll give you an example. We have a lot of retail customers that are running not only their ERP, but their point of sale systems and things like that on Google Cloud. But the interesting thing is that they can flex. So the cool thing is what they can do is they can add capacity, they can add compute as they need it. And when they don't need it, they can give it back and continue running. This is very unique. This is something that all cloud providers can provide today. And it really changes the paradigm on how you run and manage your digital core and all the analytics and the industry analytics that surround it. Hopefully that's helpful. Back to you, Damien.
Yeah, actually, so just give you an example, actually, it speaks volumes, and to my own personal experience, working with some retail customers, I remember having to manage the old compact service in each store location, right? Back in the day, as you mentioned, and then As the Christmas rush comes in, we have to go in and perhaps add another server, to your point. These are all things that you're just taking for granted, actually. And one other area, as an enterprise architect with SAP, having to deal with multiple instances. And as you mentioned, one of the key things I've talked to customers is leveraging Google's own global network with their local points of presence, right? Giving the flexibility for someone in, Shanghai to access a single server that's still in New York. Giving that infrastructure capability for those single instance strategies is really key as well. So, Ramesh, I want to just ask you, can you please share with us some of the opportunities for moving to cloud that you've come across from your customers, and how to actually invent new business models and revenue streams versus just the cost advantage that we've seen with these moves?
Sure, Damien. I think Snehanshu brought in a good point, right, on how customers are connecting ERP, kind of doing the consolidation, also connecting to the larger offerings that the cloud system provides. Right? And as we look at a lot of these customers who are going with the SAP modernization, cloud modernization is kind of tied very close to it, right? And most of these customers are taking both of these journeys together to the market, right? And what happens with all of this is they are kind of not only looking at SAP as a silo system or an ecosystem, but they're looking at how SAP can coexist with a lot of the other offerings that cloud brings to the table. And that is where customers start realizing a lot of value by putting their investments into the SAP ecosystem, right? So it's not about just going ahead and launching your S4HANA platform, but it's also about how you connect S4HANA with the larger ecosystem the enterprise has, right? And cloud is a very big accelerator that helps you to connect your SAP to the end-to-end applications that are sitting in your enterprise, right? So Shah spoke about connecting the point of sales. That's one example, but you could look at connecting to your plant maintenance systems using the cloud. You could look at bringing a lot of these smaller applications that are sitting in the ecosystem as microservices on the cloud, and then they can talk to your SAP S4 instance in a real time, right? And that way, the end business users, they don't see where the application is running, whether it's an SAP, whether it's a silo application, but they see an integrated experience coming together, right? With a better performance is one, and second is better business outcomes. And with this, what happens is a lot of our SAP implementations that we have seen in the past, right? We have spent a lot of time in simplifying the SAP architecture, simplifying the business models and all, and a lot of energy has always gone in there, right? So now what is happening with the cloudification, it's simplifying that piece much more easier. And with RISE coming into the picture, that whole implementation is much more streamlined. And now business have the opportunity to look beyond what SAP and cloud could give to them, right? So that is where the business models comes into the play. So Shah spoke about a few examples. I can give a few more. Like there are customers who are looking at connecting the inventory goods movement directly to their S4 instance via the cloud integration. And what it does for a customer is that they can actually predict everything on a real-time basis. So if there is a particular stock that's getting out of shelf in a particular store in a city, right? The ability to raise a transport request and bring the stock back from the warehouse, from the closest warehouse, is the ability to kind of have the products sold to the consumers, right? And some of these small things, they mean a lot of dollar value to the business stakeholders. Especially, I was giving example of retail, but you could imagine similar examples in all industries, right? So it's all about how quickly you can get things to the market and kind of enable your customers with better customer experience, and also increase the efficiency in your overall process inflow. So that actually helps us to kind of look beyond new business models and help customers with better opportunities as well.
Great. Thanks, Ramesh. I mean, I might bring Snehanshu into this because I remember working with a particular CPG company, right? And one of the things that we saw is perhaps we talked about supply chain as an example. Snehanshu, the CTO asked me, "Hey, can we not wait on notification that the truck is late? We know where the truck is now. Exactly. We know through navigation. You can see this truck is going to be projected ETA of 2 hours. I'm going to miss my cross-docking opportunity." So I was just wondering whether things like that, where we can now take the power of the geo platforms from Google Cloud, etc., and integrating that. What's your take on the flexibility to do things like that?
Actually, this is something, Damien, that is absolutely happening. What we're seeing customers like right now leverage the power of things like what we use in our personal life. which is Google Maps or Waze. How do you bring that in? On top of that, what I'm also seeing, a really good example is a partner of both SAP and Google is a company called Project 44. So if you think about companies like Project 44, what they're doing is they're actually giving you real-time information on where containers are, where ships are. So if you think about all the supply chain challenges that we're facing today, imagine being able to know that, look, your goods, whether they're moving from China or Europe, are exactly at this location based on what's going on. They're being diverted or they're intended to arrive at a certain point. Taking that kind of information and pushing that into your digital core, and that, I look at that, and you look at driving better outcomes, you look at better plans, being able to do that. It also gives you a lot more collaborative capabilities in terms of what you can do with partners. Imagine actually being able to tell your partners that, look, here's what the intended date looks like. Based on that, let's work together on what we need to do next. So we're seeing different data sources, whether it's a consumer products company or a retailer, all of this coming into play. Another good example I'll give you is, if you think about the last 2 years, every time somebody is doing, let's say, a simple demand forecast that pretty much every company in the world needs to work on. If you're a consumer products company, you're a manufacturer, you're a retailer. Now the challenge, because if you look at the way most people forecast, it's based on historical data. Well, think about what is historical. The last 6 months tells us nothing. So integrating signals like what are people searching on, right? Google Trends, for example. We've over the last year, Google has made these data sets available to our platforms. The other thing is going beyond that and looking at what does weather come into play over here, and then looking even beyond search and looking at what are people looking at on Pinterest, for example. So we have a couple of retailers right now. One of the interesting things they're doing is they're looking at what people are searching on, what people are looking at on Facebook, Pinterest, and this is at an aggregate level. There's absolutely privacy is a major is preserved over here. But what you're looking at is at an aggregate level are particular types of clothes, particular types, colors coming into play, and you can plan based on that. So this actually comes into play, especially for retailers or consumer products companies that have very short cycle times for their products. Leveraging this kind of information becomes absolutely key.
Great. I mean, thanks, Snehanshu, because like I said, I think one of the key things that from SAP's point of view is the fact that, cloud ERP is the target state, right? And this is where you get the flexibility to do all the things that we just talked about, right? It's not about business as usual. If you're doing business as usual, you're not in business anymore these days, in this day and age, right?
Absolutely. It's about new outcomes, right? And I think, that's the really interesting thing. I look at, I'll put a plug in over here. One of the really interesting things that SAP has done over the last few years is really taken the SAP business technology platform to a whole new place. So what we're seeing, all these examples that we're talking about, these are the kinds of things where you're taking the digital core, but you're actually connecting it to different systems, to partners, to different data sets. And that's really the promise of what BTP brings to the table.
Exactly. And, I think along those lines, I think, as I mentioned, everybody's familiar with the cloud ERP and S/4HANA cloud as a digital core and all that powers. And a lot of my interactions with customers as well as partners such as TCS and Ramesh and team we understand the value, right? I know that's where we need to be. My issue is not the value or knowing the value or even of actually creating value from it. It's getting there, right? And that's the aspects about it. And I think I just wanted to touch on the aspects of both what you've discussed here and what Yugal mentioned as one of the key drivers facing organizations, really. And if you look at all of those things together, that really is the impetus from which we actually design Rise with SAP. Because it's all about making sure that we create a curated journey to help you take the learnings from thousands of previous journeys and bring the necessary tools, processes, and automations in that migration activity in terms of analyzing what are the best opportunity areas, high value areas for you to target. We brought in additionally with our partners as well, our business process intelligence functions. Shah, going back to your point here, I had a conversation the other day with an automotive company. And when we talked about the flexibility of being able to redesign processes, the question came back from the CIO, well, are you also redesigning my workforce? Because you're changing things. That's the thing that needs to go hand in hand, right? And that's where we actually talked about business process intelligence is the one part, right? It's the simulation aspects of how can you change the processes and model that. And that's one of the aspects, obviously with Rise with SAP, we give you that commercial flexibility to change things around. Gone are the days of having to sit down with a spreadsheet and work out, oh, it's 25 FICO users, 10 SD users, because that world doesn't exist anymore, right? In reality, as we keep changing and evolving. And even at SAP, Luca really changed our finance processing model to be more adaptive. And in order to be adaptive, not only do you have to have the technology, but you need the commercial flexibility, you need the training flexibility. And all of that is really what I want to just highlight with regard to Rise with SAP is really looking at your journey, making sure that you get a curated journey with our partners, bringing in that expertise from the solution sets that you've done. I'm going to ask Ramesh to speak briefly about that, but it's more about taking that curated journey, getting you the opportunity to get to that digital core as quickly as possible with the least risk mitigated and least disruption, and have the opportunity, as you mentioned, Snehanshu. One aspect about the Rise with SAP is the fact that we come with those business networks for communication with our customers and our partners, the business technology platform that comes to do those innovations. And by the way, the business technology platform now comes pre-configured or pre-integrated into some of the core services from Google Cloud. So again, it's about a fast start. It's not about that lengthy journey that we used to have to worry about. So I was just wondering, this is a lot, something that you've obviously done with our, many customers, et cetera. So I thought perhaps you could share with us, what do we have to actually change in terms of the way we need to now address things as a cloud-first model and versus the on-premise ways of that we used to manage and drive objectives in the organization?
Yeah, I think if you look at some of these challenges that customers are facing, right, and the examples that Snehanshu gave is very aligned with what we are also seeing in the customer's landscape. So a lot of these customers today, they are not looking at SAP as a system where you just go and create orders or just put in your CRM leads and all, right? They are looking at SAP as a system that will drive the entire enterprise. And that's where a lot of these offerings, they come into a really good use, right? So in TCS, we have built several industry cloud offerings leveraging SAP's business transformation, business technology platforms, right? And what these offerings they do is they help customers get more out of not only their SAP ecosystem, but across the enterprise. So if I were to give you an example, right, like for example, in the life science industry, right, when you look at medical device industries, they operate in a very different model where they send out these devices from the hospital, from the manufacturer, it goes to the hospitals and it comes back. The entire business model of these organizations, they rely on the time of how much it takes to go to the hospital and come back, right? And their ability to invoice the customers within that short time frame. Today, a lot of these customers, they are having a very big leak in their cash flow because there's a very big time cap over there by the time the device goes from point A to point B and comes back. So what we have done is we have built some of these offerings using SAP's B2B platform on cloud, right? And it helps the customers to track these things on a real-time basis. So the medical device companies, they know where is their devices right now, right? And it also gets regulated by temperature, humidity, and all those 50 parameters. And it also gives a lot of transparency to the end consumers, which is the doctors in this case. So they know exactly how the device was brought to them and if the violations and all of the cases. And based on that, they could renegotiate. And they can also do the payment on the spot using blockchain technologies and all. So it's all about SAP being a system that enables all of these transformations for the business stakeholders and then bringing in more value back to the end consumers. Right. So that's how we see a lot of these things driving across. And what the other thing I also see is a lot of these things are getting more and more integrated with SAP Rise coming into the picture. Right? So earlier we were doing a lot of these projects, we were doing a lot of these programs with customers, but they were kind of in different places. But Rise is kind of bringing all of these things together. And the combination of Rise with Google, with TCS is bringing in a lot of value to the customers. So Damien,
Thanks,
a
Ramesh.
question.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, sorry?
No, I was just saying, I had a question, Damien, right? So what we see is a lot of these customers are now talking about Rise. There's a lot of discussion going around that. And since you have been driving this discussion across the board, I wanted to put one question that I keep getting from all customers, right? What is the best way to select my Rise strategy, right? Or what is that Rise will help me in simplifying my deployments?
Yeah, I mean, so I hate to say this, the classic consulting answer, other than saying it depends. But at the end of the day, I think what you're going to realize from the Rise with SAP and our partners is the fact that we support all starting points. That's the one thing we learned, right? Unfortunately, as much as we would love to have standardization globally across our many thousands of customers, right? What fits for one does not fit for the others. And so when we created the Rise with SAP program, one of the key tenets of that was making sure that we support multiple starting points. And the reality is the starting point could be multiple within the same organization. As we look at different, within a multi-global segment organizations, what one division does is not the same as what the other division does, right? So the flexibility, it's that traditional. One thing that most of our customers might be kind of like thinking, hold on a minute, Damien, you're talking about flexibility with SAP? From the old days of where we were used to, this is the way, this is the best practice, this you can't, deviate from that, etc. I think we've understood that we need to have that flexibility, giving our customers the opportunity to do a greenfield, or is it a brownfield, or is it a mixed match of that, right? Understanding the opportunities to bring forward the best practices and drop the old, unused practices and modes, customizations, etc. Right? So one of the things that we've really done with the point of view of the strategy for Rise is giving our customers a flexibility, the ability to start from wherever they want. Then working with the accelerators that our partners like yourself, TCS, brings to help with that journey. And we're working with all of our partners and creating mappings, what we call making sure that we understand who's doing what in this new world. Because ultimately, Rise with SAP is all about consuming that intelligent enterprise as a service, right? You as a customer, you don't need to worry about running and operating that. Between our partners and SAP, we manage that. Your business is all about, do I have the right service? Do I have the right capability at the right SLA to run my business, to innovate my business, to link with my other business processes? So when you look at it from Rise, I think what you're seeing, Ramesh, is the fact that we're giving our customers the ability to execute. It's that curated journey map, more pre-delivered functionality or pre-integrated connectivity between our systems, and really giving you the opportunity to consume that intelligent enterprise. Because that's where the true value is. I think everybody we're talking about is there. It's all about getting to that consumable stage quicker with the risk mitigating fashion, and obviously in a commercial model that allows you to actually get there faster and easier. Operationally, making it more of an OPEX cost versus the large CAPEX expenditures we used to have in the past. So I think from that point, that's one of the benefits of what we bring with Rise with SAP. So what I would like to do, actually, hopefully, Yugal, if you're still on the phone, I mean, we talked about a lot of tactical operational stuff, right? I think it might be worthwhile bringing you back into this conversation in terms of, from a strategic kind of like management process, etc. I think we need to kind of like clearly articulate and define now, is there a difference between this cloud a first model of just deploying in cloud, or is it meaning like, is it cloud fit? As in, like, are we leveraging cloud-based capabilities? I was just wondering if you could speak to some of the kind of the enterprise approaches with regard to when we just talk about cloud, everybody thinks it's just cloudy kind of stuff, right? So I was just wondering from a strategic point of view of how we map enterprise objectives into kind of like the strategy for cloud ERP and leveraging cloud in general, Yugal.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I was able to dial in from outside the phone as well. Now, I think you're right when you say, when there is about cloud, people may end up saying, okay, this is a SaaS-based ERP or something like that. I think the benefits and the business case of cloud ERP people get, but of course the transformation historically of ERP landscape has been challenging. So then, what they now want to do is, okay, now we have got a very powerful platform in cloud. What should we do about it? And many times, because most enterprises are now in some shape or form into their cloud journey, now they believe everything can be cloudy, which to an extent is right. But then for ERP specifically, given the importance of that, they have to be absolutely sure that they are ready. So it is just not about because I have a cloud-based ERP, I can use it. I think they have to think through about multiple things. Two of them very key. One is their implementation roadmap. How are they going to do? Second, their own assessment. Okay, are they mature enough to do this journey? If not, what all they need to do to start this journey? Because eventually they will have to use cloud in some shape or form. And generally, in our work with enterprises, what we have seen is, though of course, given the fact that they are investing so much money, they would want to get as much bang for their buck. So the return on investment is just not focused on one dimension. What they are saying is, we will divide our cloud-based ERP transformation into two things, two major themes. One is for efficiency, the second is innovation. And it's rarely a binary case. I mean, we don't see any enterprise that say, oh, okay, I do not want innovation from my cloud-based ERP, or we do not see any enterprise that say, okay, innovation is good, but I do not want efficiency. Nobody really says that. But what does happen is, they do get into one of these as their primary focus of cloud-based ERP transformation. So whether it is due to for efficiency gains, which means it's a classical lift and shift, where you leave out lot of value on the table, and then down the line they realize their cloud journey was more or less a waste of time, because they just lifted and shifted everything what they were doing on prem to a cloud model now. On the other hand, something around cloud for innovation, where they say, okay, we understand cloud, we understand ERP, but how do we bring all of these things together to build differentiated competence? Because gone are the days where ERP was just a back end lying somewhere in your data center, which nobody knew except when you have to run a PO or an invoice. Now it is front and center. So unless you build those differentiated capabilities using cloud for innovation, going forward you would realize that you have wasted a lot of money in this transformation. So when we work with our clients, we tell them, one, cloud and ERP coming together is a very potent combination. But before you get into that journey, you need to assess yourself whether you are ready for it. If not, what you need to do, what is going to be your implementation roadmap, what is going to be your business case, and how this journey is going to evolve. So back to you.
Thanks, Yugal. I mean, like you said, I think we've seen that happen many times. And in fact, one of the key, learnings from the rise with SAP, being over a year old now, right, is as you've mentioned before, people that tend to look at this, it's a pure efficiency TCO play, as opposed to it's about innovation. It's about the business agility, the business process remapping, evolving, continual evolution, right? And that's one of the key things. I think you're absolutely right, because it's about this access to innovation. We myself, in our team, we just talk about continual innovation, or a continual process innovation is what I actually look at it, because sometimes we in this industry keep throwing the word innovation around all the time. Ultimately, it's whatever you do to improve that process, and whatever you're doing with that process is about improving that experience, right? Ultimately, it all just keeps tickling up to that aspect. And it's the fact that when we look at the cloud ERP and everything else that we just talked about, it's the access to that innovation, access to the abilities and the technologies to create some of these transformations. So I thought I'll bring it back to Snehanshu here, and kind of like look at you from your experience, and we've obviously shared the same experience in the last year for our customers making Rise with SAP journeys on Google Cloud. I was just wondering if there's whether you would say, cloud transformation is a journey and not a one-time activity. What's your key considerations when our customers are really looking at selecting the right partner for success in terms of running? Where should we be running our cloud ERP? Snehanshu?
Yeah, Damien, that's a really great question. In reality, there are three choices that all customers have to make, right? One is, where should I run my ERP? Who should my cloud vendor be? The second piece is really around what platform am I going to use apart from the cloud to extend? We talked about a lot of innovation use cases, and that's where the platform really comes into play. That not just leveraging SAP BTP, but what are the native tools that the cloud is providing? And then last but not least, who is my service provider going to be? If you look at I'll give you an example, right? We recently, SAP and Google work with MSC Industrial, and they're in production. They're super happy. And, if you look at their CIO, what he talks about is very, very key. Basically says, look, the reason I chose Rise and the reason I'm running on Google Cloud is it's a service now. I don't have to worry about the ERP anymore, right? I can basically put all of my focus on innovation, on value-added activities versus worrying about actually running the solution, right? And that becomes a big thing. That's and I think you hit on this, that the ERP as a service, that's a real promise of what Rise is. Now, when you kind of double click and you say, okay, how do I pick my cloud? There are a couple of considerations that you've got to look at. One of the things you've got to look at as you look at the cloud is, what is the business continuity and availability that the cloud is going to provide? Definitely SAP is running the ERP as a service, but there are things that each cloud vendor is providing. Like you hit on one of the big ones, the big promise of Google is our network. It's low latency, right? I mean, think about it. If you wanted to check if the internet is up, I bet you the thing you type in is www.google.com. People just assume Google's going to be there. So when you run your digital core on Google, you're going to assume that it's going to run and it's going to be there. The second thing you look at is, are there things that the cloud provider is providing you in terms of business continuity above and beyond at an infrastructure level? So I'll give you an example. One of the reasons Google is always up is underneath the covers, we have something called live migration. And the concept is really simple. What it means is Google basically says that you will never take downtime if we need to do infrastructure maintenance. So for example, if we need to do a BIOS update, if we need to basically swap out your hard drive, you're not actually going to take downtime. That's huge. And this is not something that's available everywhere. The other piece that I really believe in, and this is kind of for the philosophy of Google, is that there should be no lock-in. So there should be openness. And we know that all customers are going to take a multi-cloud approach. The same way in our personal lives, you may have Apple phones, but a Samsung TV, and you may have a Sony DVR. So those are the kinds of things that you got to look at. The other thing you have to look at is partners. Are there great partners like TCS who have experience on the infrastructure, on the cloud platform? That becomes another key point that you've got to look at. And then as you look at the platform capabilities, I think some of the things you need to look at is, are all the SAP services that are mission critical to you available on this cloud? Things like BTP, for example, things like HANA Cloud, for example. And then you've got to look at, what are the value-added services that the cloud provider can provide to you in terms of AI/ML, in terms of APIs for extension. Can they also, we're talking, one of the things we're doing is talking a lot about SAP, but if you look at most of our customers, they're heterogeneous. So does this cloud also provide you the ability to run your non-SAP applications? And then as you look at service providers, it's going to be, what kind of experience do they have, both with SAP RISE as well as the cloud? What are the SLAs that they're going to be able to provide as you look at them, whether you're bringing in a provider in the MSP model, or you're using a provider like TCS, who has a lot of experience doing this, is migrating customers to the cloud. And then how do they modernize you, right? So those are some of the things, as I work with customers, I sit down with them and say, look, these are the things you've got to look at. You've got to look at, are you choosing the right place to run your ERP? And that means, business continuity, availability, where are the different data centers? What kind of innate services do they provide to run your non-SAP applications? Are they providing you the ability to extend your SAP applications? And then as you look at the provider, the big things you've got to look at is experience, SLAs, as well as what model do you want to choose? Is it an MSP model, or do you want to, are you looking at somebody actually to help you migrate and you're going to run your SAP applications yourself? And it's usually a mix of all of these. Ramesh, maybe I'll turn it over to Ramesh and see, what kind of advice do you provide?
Well, I think the simplest advice we say is come to TCS, right? But the thing is that a lot of customers, when they choose TCS, right, the real factors that they're looking at are few things. What is the delivery capability of TCS or as an SI, right? What is the historical records that we have done implementing or providing solutions to our customers? Second is the partnership that we have with SAP, so that whenever we are doing these complex programs, and if there are challenges, which usually is part of some of these complex programs, how quickly we can kind of get together with SAP and the cloud units, right, like Google, and come to a quicker solution, I would say. And the third part, I would say, is they look at the innovations that we bring to the table. So as we start seeing, right, in the last 2 decades, 2 decades back, the SAP implementation was a very complex program. But now a lot of those things have streamlined, and now with the S4HANA, it's much more streamlined. So now it's not that difficult to go around deploying model companies or any of those systems. But now it's about what next you give back to the customer. It's not just, the journey doesn't end with S4HANA implementation, right? It's that how you put S4HANA in the core, and then you connect all these other things outside the box to the S4HANA instance. And a lot of things customers are expecting the SI to bring those ideas to the table, because the customers have been using these decade-old systems. They are probably ran out of ideas. They have business problems to focus on. So they actually look at the SI who actually is driving innovation along with the S4HANA in the digital core. And that's where I think we see a lot of value coming in from TCS with the investments that we have done in building these innovation offerings on BTP, on Google Cloud, and not as a silo offering, but as an end-to-end process flow, right? So we have built industry templates for multiple industries like rail, medical devices, professional services, where it's not just a S4HANA industry template that the customer gets, but they actually see an end-to-end play from the IoT to data on BQ, connected all the way to the S4 instance. And when the customer looks at it, they are looking at an end-to-end business process that is there so that they could just deploy it and take things forward. And it's not a standard business process. It's a business process that enables innovation to the customers, right? So the standard business process, of course, you would get it with the model company, but this is bringing the innovations on top of the model company. And these are ideas that sometimes the customers have told us that they have not even thought about it. And it was a surprise to them that, okay, these things could be thought about and solved in this way. So those ideas and those innovations is what actually is driving business towards TCS, I would say.
Great. Thanks, Ramesh. And Snehanshu, thank you for your insight as well. I thought it might be worthwhile kind of like mention something about the rise with SAP. I didn't touch on it particularly because we got into really more about the tactical aspects, etc. Right? When you look at rise with SAP, you'll see that SAP is really anchored the whole strategy and the value props around with rise with SAP around three key pillars. And we've actually all touched on this conversation, but I thought it'd be worthwhile just to quickly highlight so everyone in the audience understands what we mean by that. The first one is like what we call it, take the lead. It's doing everything that you do now in an optimal fashion, right? We talk about that meaning like the top line, the bottom line, and the green line. All three companies, we didn't go into it too much yet. Sustainability, the green line, it's key. All the announcements that as Google Cloud has made regarding their own sustainability, the solution stacks that TCS and SAP are delivering, the fact that the sustainability platform is built into the core foundations of our business technology platform, etc. The other thing is we talk about it in terms of like is taking the lead. The other one aspect is obviously about never stop improving, right? It's that continual innovation aspect and making sure that you as an organization have the ability to do that. And lastly, it's securing your success. We talked about these, Snehanshu's talked about resiliency. From our point of view, it's not just about operational. It's the fact that in this day and age, the fact that you have to change suppliers. You might not do business in Southern India, but you might need to tomorrow. Well, does your system handle all the VAT processes, the HR processes if there's having to run payroll over there? So it's operational resiliency that comes into play as well, giving you the flexibility to operate your organizations at a global scale on a flick of a switch is what I like to kind of like say. So that's, it's really interesting conversations regarding that. And I thought, we could kind of like come back down to some, what does this all mean in real life? So you mentioned one particular customer. I thought I'll open it up with Ramesh. I was just wondering, if you can share a particular client scenario where, the cloud-based ERP journey has really started or is ongoing. And it's, if you can just give us some insights into how it's helped drive innovation for them and their organization.
Yeah, sure, Damien. And see, I'll take a quick view, right? The way we are seeing a lot of these innovations coming into the play, it's not just business scenarios, but it's also using the technology underneath it, right, that Google provides, whether it's AutoML, whether it's the NLP-based technologies that Google provides. How you integrate all of that with FPGA and SAP together is where the real value of all of this comes together, right? And in terms of example, let me take an example of a life science distribution company that we are working with on Google Cloud, right? So this customer has a lot of data that's out there in the system, right? And especially on their CRM, they get huge amount of data in terms of leads and all, right? So it's like almost terabytes of data that keeps piling on a daily basis. And when they have so many leads coming into the system, one challenge, of course, the sales team has is how do you kind of pick up what are the priority ones that they need to focus on, right? And a lot of times the leads are coming from the delivery owners, the sales owners, or the shop owners and all, right? So it may come from different systems. So they have close to 400 different systems that is actually generating leads for them. And as we all know, each system will have its own template, its own parameters and all that. And getting all the data together into a single SAP is a nightmare, I would say, right? To get all these things aligned together. And that's why what we did is we applied the AutoML and NLP-based algorithms on top of it, which does a complete text-based searches across the board, right? It identifies what are the priority ones, what are the more important equipments that need to go, which are time-based, right? There are certain equipments that are time-based, certain equipments can go over a period of time. There are certain equipments that are perishable as well, so you need to kind of make sure they reach the market at a shorter time frame. So these NLPs, they go out, look for all those keywords across the system, and based on that, it generates its own algorithm where it automatically assigns priority to all the leads. And based on that, the sales team that is sitting out there, they know what are the items that they need to focus on priority. They know what are the SLAs that are there based on the other items. And this is a combination of data coming from 400 different systems, right, into a single SAP CRM. And that is where you're applying this NLP to automate all of these things together and also adding business value, because now the work that the sales team was doing earlier was a lot of manual, going through the documents, going through all these PDFs and all, but now everything is automated to them, and they have to look at it, and they have to probably initiate the orders, right? So that the products, they reach the consumers at the right time. That's kind of one example, I would say, but there are several of these examples where these NLPs and auto MLs, they actually are driving innovation into the SAP ecosystem, right? And that's what I was referring earlier also, like earlier customers looked at SAP as a system of record, but now it's about how it will drive business for the business stakeholders.
Thanks, Ramesh.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to actually just to open it up to some the rest of the things with this counterpoint idea that I had, because I grew up in the traditional world of R3 and green screens even before that, etc. Right? And I just like to ask about this one. I just noticed I'm an iPhone user, have been for a long time, but whenever I'm trying to find something, I notice here's what I do. I don't know if you do the same. I'm like swiping across, trying to find the app. After my 180 apps that are on there, I'm like trying to, and then I looked at my son, who just, whenever he needs to do that, he just brings up the search bar, searches for it. It's just the way that people work now. So I remember, as an example, what I really liked about what I had a S4HANA simulation program that I took part in. The need to find, somebody said, I need to know how much AI is left off for this customer. I'm trying to find the Fiori screens and things like that. And this other person is just searching. It's natural language, as you mentioned, it's a natural language. What's the AR for customer ABC? Duh. It's a new way of doing things. And that's one of the things I think I've just learned from interactions, is the fact that we as organizations have to understand that business and organizations and the workforce is changing. How they interact is changing. And therefore, we have to provide platforms and capabilities that adapt to that. I was just wondering, Snehanshu, if you have any, experience or ideas about that you've seen where the interaction aspects is really changing in this new dynamic workforce.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give you an example, right? Like, when inside of Google, we have something called Stuff. Stuff is like what we use to order everything. And what's really interesting about Stuff is it's actually, everybody at Google knows how to use it, because this is how you get your phone, your computer, your accessories. But what's wild is that behind the covers, Stuff is actually a front end to both Hybris and Ariba. And so think about it, Hybris and Ariba actually are two different applications. You use them, in kind of different contexts to a certain degree. But it's kind of similar to your example of search. It's having one UI against two SAP applications, depending on what you're ordering. At the back end, it's routed to either Ariba or it's going through Hybris and going through straight to our IT staff. So that's a very simple example, but this is where the, kind of the power of customer experience comes in, and being able to kind of front end SAP with new UIs, so using SAP tools or using even some of the tools that we provide. In our case, a lot of this is done through, a combination of Fiori and some very, very simple, web interfaces. So we're seeing a lot of that. Wanted to touch on, the other side of the equation. Like I think a lot of the examples we've been talking about are more consumer, retail, or life sciences oriented. One of my favorite examples of RISE customer is a company called AES. If you're not familiar with AES, AES is one of the largest utilities in the US. The cool thing that AES is doing, where they said, okay, we're running SAP on RISE, we're running it, it's a digital core. But one of the challenges they have is that they have a lot, one of the things the AES has is they have wind farms. So they have giant turbines sitting out in West Texas, different parts of America. Now think about this, when you have all these wind turbines, you have to do maintenance on them. And but when do you do it? How do you prioritize, right? How do you figure out what's going on? Now, typically in the past, what people did was they would actually just send a tech out. So you'd actually have somebody sit in a truck, drive out to the middle of nowhere, climb up the turbine to see what's going on. Today, it's actually very different, because what they're doing is they're actually collecting a ton of telemetry data from these turbines. All of that goes into an OSI historian type application. that gets analyzed. But then what they did was they went one step further. This is taking ideas that we used to talk about with AI and ML maybe 5-10 years ago and brought it to life. So what they do is they actually use a partner that has a fleet of drones, and the partner sends these drones out and takes pictures of the turbines on a regular basis. These pictures are then analyzed on Google to figure out what's going on. So now you have the data in historian, you have all the history of maintenance that you've done in SAP, and then you have all of these pictures and you're analyzing them to say, is there a crack? Is there a wind bird strike? And then based on that, they're prioritizing in SAP what maintenance activities they need to do. It also, think about this, and they've taken it one step further, where it's not only being used to schedule and figure out what preventative maintenance they need to do, they're now using it to optimize inventory, spare parts inventory. So now that you have all of this data coming together, and then they're able to learn from it. So they're now able to say things like, if I see this kind of a digital signature, it's probably this, because I've actually analyzed all these images, I've put these things together, and then based on the maintenance, the history that I have on these particular turbines in this particular part of the US, this is what I need to do. So a very simple example, but a very powerful example of SAP digital data coming together, IoT type data that they're collecting, and then taking it one step further and actually bringing in imagery into the whole picture.
Great. Thanks, Snehanshu. I mean, I think we can obviously see where all the opportunities lie, right? And actually, at the end of the day, it's all about empowering our customers to get to that stage, to do all the things that you just described, right? And that's really the ultimate goal of when we look at Cloud ERP. So, Yugal, I thought I'd bring it back to kind of like a little more of a strategy aspect, right? Because in my opinion, what we've just been discussing is so easy. I mean, you can just press a button and it's going to happen, right? So I was just wondering, if you could speak to, how can an enterprise really future-proof their digital core and, taking into account all of the things that we just discussed. What would your suggested approach for organizations to undertake that journey?
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, most of the enterprises are in this journey. Some are facing, some are seeing success, some are not. So one of the essential and crucial point is where they are starting with. I think that becomes very important, where they are as of today. And then taking those steps to go to the target operating model, whatever that may be. And then realizing that digital core is lot many things in addition to ERP. You have the data side of it, which is becoming very crucial now in the new world. So the way we have generally seen enterprises transforming their landscape or building a future-proof digital core successfully, one is they realize in the short term they will need to do these things. Generally, more or less, start with some kind of lift and shift, and then get a hang of success to begin with. But then addressing the data question upfront, I think that is becoming the core. And now, given the fact that cloud provides so much of advanced and extended capabilities to run your data, all the AI ML you can do, and then build your API strategy, plus all the DevOps type of CI/CD pipelines you have built. But at the end of the day, all of these things, even in the short term, need to foster some kind of culture of innovation. So that cultural change has to come in somehow. If this is taken just as a technology transformation engagement, much like earlier times where ERP or digital core modernization have not seen so much success, I think this will end up in the same way. So that in addition to all the business goals of operational efficiency through lift and shift using data transformation, the important thing is to drive that culture. And then once you get some more comfort, once you have a hang of your data landscape, your digital core landscape, then you move to, okay, now what, from journey to the cloud, to journey in the cloud, and then journey beyond the cloud as well. How do I bring some of the native principles, because many of these clouds give so much of capabilities natively. how those can be leveraged. So it is just not about lifting and shifting, which you did earlier, but then how do you drive modernization now? And modernization of not only select applications, but as many applications as the business case allows. And because you are talking about cloud native, then of course, all the microservices, containers, all of these different technologies will come into picture. So would DevSecOps. And here you then amplify your user experience as well, because generally, historically, we have seen is in core modernization, ERP modernization, user experience has normally not got enough attention. But here is where you try to build a lot more interactive and responsive interfaces. So you focus more on your revenue. So earlier you are focusing on the efficiency part. Now you are growing your business, and the target operating model where you have done all of this. Then you realize, okay, I may not end up using one cloud vendor only. So how do I build interoperable competence? How do I build interoperable workloads? So use it. Some of the clouds are more amenable to multi-cloud ecosystem than the others. And then are there any innovation frameworks they can use off the shelf? So I think all of these coming together, and then further enhancing the user experience, right? Conversational interfaces, stakeholder experience centric transformation, using data to make your business more real time. And I heard earlier examples where people were taking weeks and months to do something, and now they are doing it in hours or minutes as well. So then how do you create some of these sustained business advantages? The crux we have always told our clients and see successful clients doing is that not taking this as a one and done initiative, almost like a treadmill. So you need to keep running on it, otherwise you will fall. So start small, get some initial success, start leveraging native principles of native offerings of the cloud vendors, and then try to bring more interoperability and stakeholder experience into the picture. And most likely, your digital core transformation journey will be a success.
Great. Thanks, Yugal. I thought we've talked about strategy, we talked about innovation. I think it makes sense for our audience to kind of like understand how do we actually embark on this, right? I think we've all got the building blocks. We also got the target state that we want to get to, the way that we want to operate as an organization. So Ramesh, based on kind of like the TCS's experience, I think we firmly believe that cloud ERP is essential for enterprises to succeed in the next normal, right? I mean, I think hopefully everybody understands that. And I would love to actually have a sidebar with anybody that understands or can predict what the next normal is, because I'd be really interested to understand that. But I was just going to say, from the point of view of, what we've discussed, I just thought it'd be, given your experience, etc. Ramesh, to kind of speak to, what do you think we should be going about this journey? What are the key things and learnings that you can bring to the audience to help them with their journey?
Yeah, sure, Damien. I think the key aspect that you're looking for, right, in the cloud-based ERP is the first thing is rationalization of your business process. So one of the key things that customers are looking out is how do I rationalize my business process, make it much more simple, make it much more agile, and make it much more customer success driven, right? Rather than having a FICO process or a sales and distribution process in the system, make it much more customer results driven process in the system. And that is how you could drive KPIs for your business stakeholders. So that becomes one of the key things that the business is trying to establish now. How you do it is the next part of it, right? And that's where the technology aspect of SAP's business technology platform comes into the play. Google's several offerings, they come into the play as well. So a combination of all these things coming together is what enables the customer to achieve that. And what we see is a lot of these things require a lot of re-architecting of your whole solution. Not only the solution, but also your business process. You don't look at a particular business process. Like if you take a inventory movement process, you don't look at how you implement that process in SAP, but you look at how you can re-architect using a combination of microservices and sitting in the cloud, along with the cloud native services that is supporting SAP as at the center core, right? So SAP becomes the enabler, and then it takes strengths and powers from all the other microservices, all the cloud natives that will help it to move faster. The second thing is leveraging the larger ecosystem. We spoke about the AutoML, the NLP based techniques, right? So how do you use all of that to speed things up? You gave an example of the iPhone search, right? So now customers are looking beyond that. I don't want to go into a system that shows me a couple of reports or a couple of tiles out there. We are looking at system where I can just go and search that I want this thing to be done, and it automatically goes out and triggers a set of processes, right? That will go and re-establish all of those steps that are required to be done. That earlier it was a manual or a thought process that a business manager would sit on the system and do it, but now it's all getting automated as much as possible, right? Using a lot of these techniques. And the third and the biggest part that we see is the resistance to change, right? So we can talk about all these things, we can talk about all these innovations, we can talk about all these solutions, but how do we enable that this is going to get changed, right? So the resistance becomes a key aspect of all of this, and how customers can do it in a short time frame or build that maturity or a cultural model within their organization, which accepts and embraces these changes, is one of the key aspects that we look forward to. And one thing I would also say is that as we move forward, the world is getting more and more agile. So everything that we do is how do we do things in agile fashion in a much more fast way as well.
Great. Thanks, Ramesh. I was just going to say one thing that you mentioned about resistance to change. I think one of the key things that I've seen across all of our interactions has been the fact that, everybody's familiar with the Great Resignation, the workforce. I touched upon it before, right? One of the key things that one CIO that actually looked upon Rise favorably was, guess what? My skill sets, my pooling of available skills is changing. And therefore, having access to someone that knows inside out the SAP table structure, it's great that I don't need to rely on these kind of skills, right? There's an adaptive aspect about the SAP user community and the people that support SAP as well. And it's really been interesting. I've had conversations regarding diversity and inclusivity aspects. Guess what? The low-code, no-code tooling gives business analysts the ability to create and generate applications, both from the native SAP content as well as, capabilities coming up from Google Cloud, et cetera. So there's a whole slew of things that are changing in this ecosystem that really does help for that next level, the next new normal, right? And I think it's really worthwhile understanding that all of these benefits are there to be had. And we're really talking about getting you to a point in where you can now easily start to consume this. I was just looking at some of the questions coming in. There were some very specific ones I thought I'd just pull out. There was a question regarding, the insights into SAP Analytics. Do I do BW for HANA or SAC? This one it's a very traditional thinking process, as I mentioned. I think you probably see, for whoever's looking at that, you should really look at it from a more holistically. I hate to say this, but don't think about it, should I be using this solution? Figure out what is the process, who needs this information. Traditional stuff that resided in a report, if I want to show my age, all the way back from a green bar report to a Cognos or a business object space report, to what's available now is changing. So that information can go in through that natural language interface instead. So I would strongly advise the person asking that question to look at the underlying capabilities that you're looking for rather than the solution. Does BW for HANA become DWC? Does BW become BW for HANA? The whole aspect about progression into SAC, I would look to say that work with your partners to understand, what the real demand, the experience that you're hoping to support is. So that's one of the key things I would suggest that people really take away from this, to say, we now have the ability to look at what you're trying to achieve instead of trying to figure out what's the bill of material, what are the solution sets. Go up one stage to how can I furnace and provide a more agile financial operations. That drives the discussion about how you configure and make use of FICO and all the traditional stuff. How do you actually interact with the customer? That drives, the whole customer interaction aspects and commerce aspects, et cetera. So I would strongly advise you to kind of like think about it in terms of the experience and the solution rather than the solution per se. So I know we're coming up to towards the end of the session, so I thought it might be worthwhile just looking at, based on all the conversations that we've had, I thought I'll come back and present back to all the leaders that we just had on this call. As we kind of like look at the enterprise begin their cloud ERP journey, and hopefully it's a cloud ERP. I think everyone after this discussion understands that. What kind of very quick advice could you give to our audience in terms of undertaking that? I thought I'll start with you, Yugal.
Oh, I think I have very one simple and one line advice that transform now or never. I believe a lot of the companies have almost excused themselves of creating legacy in their core. Let's say ERP like SAP, because they believe, hey, it is too complex, it is too risky, it is too this, it is so much and so. But I think now cloud provides you so much of ammunition that if you do not transform now, you as well do not transform ever.
Great, thanks. I was going to say, so Snehanshu, perhaps your closing comments on that?
Two things, right? I think it's both. I think when you start the journey, so I think it's not a question of it's no longer a question of if, it's a question of when. And it's what I tell customers is you can start in two places, right? One is you can start on the cloud ERP journey. And the second place you can start on is what I would call the innovation. And sometimes these things happen in parallel. Sometimes they happen, what innovation happens first. And what's interesting is I'm seeing a pattern now that the innovation is what's driving the business value to pay for the cloud ERP journey. So think about that. There are tons and tons of great examples of customers that have done this. Leverage those examples. I mean, this is not new at this point, right? There are hundreds of customers that have done this. Leverage those examples. And last but not least, one of the things we also look at is on the innovation side is how do you make it repeatable? So one of the things we've done at Google is we've created a solution called Cortex that actually plugs right into SAP, leverages the SAP BTP platform, SAP Analytics Cloud, and all of that. But what it gives you is repeatable innovation blocks. So you can do exactly what other customers have done ahead of you. And this is something that PCS leverages quite well as well.
Great. Ramesh, any closing ideas and comments from yourself on the journey?
Yeah, Damien, I think what I see is customers should start looking at this as an opportunity, right, where they use cloud ERP to maximize their return on investments on their SAP installations and all. So it should not be that you go and implement SAP and then you just use it as a backend system, but you rather use cloud to enable and get more value out of your SAP investments. And we see a lot of customers doing that in different ways. And one of the things that we're seeing is instead of the traditional way of looking at a BPML-based SAP implementation, customers are now redefining their entire requirements based on the customer's data strategy, the customer's consumer behaviors and all, right? The needs for the consumers and all. So they're looking at that as a starting point for all these programs, and that derives the KPIs on what needs to be done and how it needs to be done using the technology that it provides to the backend, right? And I'll give a quick example of one of the customers. You would have seen it it was there in the news also the last 2 weeks. So Fletcher Building, which is a Australia and New Zealand-based retailer, right? So they are spread across different industries. So they are into retail, they are into construction, manufacturing, a lot of different industries. And this customer was looking at a digital program to get started on. So we worked very closely with Google and we kind of defined a roadmap, which the center point is the data strategy for the customer. So it's not starting from what requirements they want, what kind of financial reports that they want, or what kind of order management system they want. The starting point is what is the data strategy that they have in place. And using the data strategy, we are now defining the building blocks of the SAP ecosystem around it. Right? So that's the way we want to kind of look at a lot of these new programs as customers get into these journeys, because the way we look at these programs have changed a lot. And also the offerings that the cloud ecosystem provides is kind of helps you to accelerate a lot of these innovations also. I would say that would be my closing comment. So leverage the power of cloud to get more out of your SAP deployments.
Great. Thanks, Ramesh. I mean, the one thing I would actually add to all
Mhm.
of these conversations
Mhm.
is one of my goals from the days of working with, I might be kind of like talking about my age here, but I remember doing automation by doing Lotus 1, 2, 3 macros. That was the height of automation. I remember when I used to be doing macros in Lotus 1, 2, 3 back in the days, right? So
Yeah.
every cycle has aspects about what we call about automation and new technologies, etc., right? And I think
Yeah.
what we're seeing now is a truly a new way of doing business. And when we get through with cloud ERP, really looking at next generation ERP, looking at the intelligent enterprise, and what Rise brings is obviously the ability for our customers to now consume that as a service. But ultimately, like I say, the value starts from that journey on, in my humble opinion, because what you effectively now have within organizations is more of a sense and respond organization. The fact that all the tools and technologies we just talked about, the access to the data assets globally at scale through platforms such as Google, allows you to actually create these automated sense and response systems. Think about it, the days of having to do planning per se
Mhm.
will eventually be something of an antiquated actual act, because the system will sense and respond automatically, right? And perform all those actions. So I think that that's kind of like where everything's going. And it's great to see that we're actually helping our customers achieve those lofty goals. So unfortunately, this has been a great discussion, but this is all the
Yeah.
time we have for today. So unfortunately, as I said, we're going to have to close out the session for today. And what I would like to do is say thank you to the audience for joining us today. And I do hope that you have some important takeaways from this session, even if it's just an inquisitive ask that you need. I'm happy if I opened up more questions for you, because that means that you're thinking about the processes, etc. And lastly, may I please request that you all share your feedback through the survey widget at the bottom of the screen. This would help us in giving you a better experience in subsequent events. With that, we will end the session today. Hope to see you all again soon. Till then, stay well and stay safe. And thank you. Thank you to my panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye bye.